thank the President of the Czech Republic. The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency Karin Keller-Sutter, President of the Thrift Confederation. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency and invite her to address the Assembly.
Madame President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 80 years ago, the world entered a new era, better times. On the 27th of January, 1945, the Auschwitz concentration camp was liberated. On the 8th of May, 1945, the war in Europe ended, and on 25 June 1945, 50 states adopted the United Nations Charter in San Francisco. And I quote from the Charter, "They were determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind." End of quote. Upon the ruins of the Second World War, a new international order was born out of a shared conviction and determination to bring peace and prosperity to the world. The horrors of this time also gave rise to the Geneva Conventions of 1949, which protect the victims of armed conflict. At that time, the foundations for progress and democracy, the rule of law, and the market economy were laid down. Foundations which, despite all of the limitations and setbacks, also benefited international cooperation, free trade, peace, and international law. Without drawing any historical parallels, it is clear that this year, as we mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, we are experiencing a new era of particularly extreme political and economic upheaval at a time when, once again, too many wars are raging with civilian populations experiencing unbearable suffering, a time in which a just lasting peace in the Middle East and Ukraine still seems beyond reach, and during which autocratic tendencies are gaining ground, including in Europe, a time in which free trade is being put to the test, and where ultimately international law, including the Charter of the United Nations, risk becoming dead letter. These upheavals are not coming out of nowhere. They are the result of developments that, in some cases, date back a long time, in which, in retrospect, we failed to take seriously enough for far too long. We need to be honest with ourselves. These are developments that have no simple solutions, neither at the international nor at the national levels, nor is it enough today to reiterate yet again, merely in speeches, the merits of a particular form of government, the rule of law, international law, free trade, and multilateralism. No, if we wish to surmount the challenges which we face, we have a duty to redouble our efforts. For what is the benefit of the achievements of civilization? What are they worth if they do not tangibly contribute to freedom, security, and prosperity, if they do not bring tangible benefits for people in their day-to-day lives? There are two errors which we must not make. Firstly, pointing the finger only at others. Secondly, leaving international organizations alone to work alone and acting as if they were completely detached from us. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to begin where we can guarantee freedom and contribute to security and prosperity right now. And generally, this is at home, within our own countries. Let me be clear, this is not about praising national self-interest, nor is this about condemning multilateralism. Quite to the contrary. Switzerland is convinced that multilateralism, international organizations, the United Nations are essential for the peaceful coexistence of peoples, for global economic prosperity, for the resolution of challenges, including migration, climate change, the digital transition, and As finance minister, I would also add for global financial stability. Last year, we together adopted the Pact for the Future, a robust commitment to multilateralism. A central pillar of that pact is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We must now implement these roadmaps without delay. Switzerland is also convinced that international Geneva can make a unique contribution to the attainment of these goals. Geneva, as the United Nations leading operational center, has robust expertise in numerous crucial areas for our future, particularly those related to humanity and innovation. This is a unique unparalleled ecosystem for reflection, discussion, and concerted action. But a strong international organization needs strong members. And when I say strong, I do not mean strength in terms of size or strength in terms of military might. I am talking about states that are in a position to provide their citizens with an environment in which they're able to flourish and to express themselves freely and in complete safety and security. Security not just in the military sense, but also at the legal, economic, and social security level. Security and freedom are essential prerequisites for economic growth and therefore for prosperity. They require institutions that are legally sound, reliable, and capable of taking action, and they require political, social, and financial stability. And here, each state has an obligation to shoulder its own responsibilities. We cannot simply delegate our responsibilities to an international organization. Ladies, gentlemen, the international community cannot but benefit from the domestic strength, prosperity, and stability of each state. Only strong states, strong domestically, can demonstrate true solidarity and contribute to a successful, prosperous international community. But we need to also redouble our efforts as an international community. Today, more than ever before, the United Nations must also take a critical look at itself to consider whether it is still able to fulfill its role as the 50 states intended when they adopted the Charter in San Francisco on 25 June 1945. Multilateralism is also undergoing unprecedented upheaval. These upheavals are punctuated by a resurgence of violations in the normative framework and the very principles and values that underpin multilateral action. Dialogue, cooperation, consensus building, respect for international law, and sovereign equality of states, regardless of size, of economic strength, or political influence. Switzerland calls upon all states to make a firm commitment to uphold the principles and values enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations 80 years ago. This is the prelude to any reflection on reforms and efficiency measures to strengthen the impact of our actions in the three pillars of the organization. With this in mind, we fully support the UN 80 reform program of the Secretary General. A greater effectiveness, coherence, agility, and impact of multilateral action should each guide our decisions. A structured, well-thought-through approach together for defining the UN of the future is vital. I can assure you that Switzerland will continue to work towards reform. We remain committed to the reform efforts to a more effective and efficient United Nations and to sustainable multilateralism, both as a reliable host state and as a committed member state. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are not in the same situation today as we were 80 years ago. We are in the midst of a critical phase, and the next chapter of history is yet to be written. This also means that we can play an active role in shaping it. And I quote an Auschwitz survivor, the Italian writer Primo Levi, "It happened. Therefore, it could happen again." This is the core of what we have to say. End of quote. But it doesn't have to happen again, and indeed it must not happen again. This is why the United Nations was created 80 years ago, and this is also why we are here today. It is up to us to ensure that this turning point in history, which is so often invoked, as was the case 80 years ago, for this to usher in a new era of better times. Let us guard against arrogance and complacency, and let us get to work at home, in our countries, and together at the United Nations. Thank you.
Merci. I thank, on behalf of the Assembly, the President of the Swiss Confederation,